I I don't know what more I can even say at this point. Genuinely. We had these conversations already, guys. Like after the Bears game, I aired out a lot of my grievances, you know. And at this point, like what do you even say? Well, I guess I can say this. Welcome into Believe in Steelers, powered by FanDuel. I'm Jarrett Bailey. The Steelers don't just lose to Buffalo. I mean, they get humiliated. 26-7 the final score. This was a 7-3 game at halftime, and then everything got blown open in the second half by Buffalo. And Pittsburgh, in every facet of the game, looked unprepared. And this is when we look back on things, this will be the beginning of the end for Mike Tomlin. Fans, for a while, there's always been people in the fan base, especially over the past like 8 years or so, that have been anti-Mike Tomlin. I mean, going back to the beginning of Mike Tomlin, there's always been people against him. But over the last decade, much louder over the last 5 years, there's been fans that have been ready to move on from Mike Tomlin. I think right now, though, is when there's actually a serious conversation that, like, okay, maybe it could happen. Fans booed Renegade. That doesn't really happen. And then finally, for what I believe is the first time, Fire Tomlin chants broke out at Acrisure Stadium in the midst of the Steelers losing to the Bills. And like I said, there's always been people in the fan base that have been ready to move on from Mike Tomlin. But this is the first time where I feel like it's a genuine possibility that it happens. Now, I've always, when having these discussions, I've always thrown in the asterisk or just the side statement of, okay, yeah, we can all complain about this, we can all say this, and we can all agree with it, but in the end, we all know it's not going to happen. Mike Tomlin's still going to be the coach of the Steelers. I think right now there's a legitimate chance, not going into Week 14, he's going to finish the season, but a legitimate chance that someone else is the guy next year. And after this game, man, like when you look at the numbers of it, it's brutal. Absolutely brutal. Let me get them pulled up here. First things first, the Buffalo Bills, 249 yards on the ground. That is a new record in Acrisure Stadium. No team has ever rushed for more yards in a game. So that alone is certainly noteworthy. The biggest thing to me, though, what was the biggest talking point coming into this game? Hey, the Buffalo Bills, no Deion Dawkins at left tackle, no Spencer Brown at right tackle. Both of them aren't playing because of injury. The Steelers had 0 sacks on Josh Allen. 0. TJ Watt, $40 million a year. The Steelers helped him win a pissing contest with Myles Garrett over money in the offseason. Over $40 million a year to TJ Watt to be an absolute ghost against Josh Allen, against backup tackles. Alex Highsmith, who they gave a big extension to a few years ago, an absolute ghost against backup tackles. Nick Herbig had a fine day. He had 2 tackles for loss and was part of the forced fumble on James Cook. 0 sacks against backup tackles. And look, TJ Watt had multiple shots at it. Alex Highsmith had a shot at it. Cam Hayward had more confrontations with Josh Allen than meaningful tackles, meaningful plays. I'm sure he'll find a way to complain about more money in the offseason, though, will Cam Hayward, though, huh? I'm just glad that Cam Hayward, had those difficult conversations with his family in the offseason about perhaps sitting out games if he didn't get more money. That's truly what I'm glad about. 0 sacks on Josh Allen. So that's the biggest number to me. 249 rushing yards, 0 sacks on Josh Allen. If you want to look at the flip side for the Steelers, Aaron Rodgers on the day, 10 of 21, buck 17. Mason Rudolph came in for that one drive. He went 0 for 3 with a pick. For anybody still saying, oh, give Mason a shot, shut the hell up. Respectfully speaking, I like Mason. He's a nice guy, solid backup, not a starting quarterback in the NFL. So anybody with that idiotic thought in their minds, let's knock that off too. It's impressive how bad the offense is. And a lot of that goes back to the receivers. The receiving core is god-awful. DK Metcalf, yeah, there isn't a number 2 there. DK Metcalf also can't separate. You know who could separate? The guy that they sent to Dallas, who's second in the NFL in receiving yards right now and is probably going to be an all-pro this year. He could separate. And by the way, I know a lot of people are going to come for me and saying, oh, Jarrett, you defended the trade. And I've also, a couple times now, raised my hand and said I was wrong about that. Hindsight being 2020, yeah, they shouldn't have traded George Pickens. My bad on that. Couldn't run the ball against a Buffalo defense that is bad at stopping the run. 58 rushing yards on 3.2 yards per attempt for the Steelers. And a large part, that probably had to do with the fact that, okay, 42-year-old beaten and battered quarterback, they probably know what's up. And when you can't go under center and you're just playing pistol all game, it's much easier for defenses to, diagnose and figure out what you're doing. So, if you want to use that as part of the reason why they struggle to run, okay, I'll hear you out on that. But this is a Bills defense that has allowed 190 rushing yards or more 3 separate occasions this year. They are one of the worst run defenses in the NFL, and the Steelers couldn't do anything. And, the big overarching thing here, what we started off with and what's going to be the overarching talking point of this episode is, how do you survive this if you're Mike Tomlin? And if you're Art Rooney, how do you let him? Again, he's going to finish the season. There's 5 games left. I mean, firing him now doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But moving on from him in the offseason needs to be a must. These need to be his final 5 games as a Steelers head coach. They ain't getting into the playoffs. You know how many total yards of offense they just had? How many total yards of offense they had against Buffalo? 166. Jesus wept. 166 yards of total offense. This team's not getting into the postseason. Especially when you look at Houston is now 7-5. They're the first team out. The Chiefs are still there. The Chiefs are going to finish with more wins than the Steelers. Indianapolis, Jacksonville, the AFC South might get 3 teams. Not to mention Baltimore, who the Steelers still have to play twice. The first of which comes next week in Baltimore, where Lamar Jackson's going to do God knows what to them. There isn't a world where Mike Tomlin should survive this. I'm not saying there's a world where he won't, because would I be surprised if he's the head coach week 1, 2026? Absolutely not. Should he? No, he shouldn't. Because what more do you need to see if you're Art Rooney? What more do you need to see? Year after year, it doesn't matter who the quarterback is, who the offensive coordinator is, what different moving pieces you bring in defensively. Oh, we'll make a splashy trade for Jalen Ramsey. We'll bring in, Asante Samuel Jr. this week. We'll sign Darius Slay. We'll bring in Patrick Queen. That'll fix everything. Now the defense still stinks. And now former players, current players are saying, yeah, the scheme isn't good. TJ Watt after the game against Buffalo said, I've never seen a team be so successful running the exact same play over and over again. Players know. And it's not just that. The body language of the players. You can tell. They're checked out, man. This is a checked out football team. Tomlin, like, there isn't a world where he should survive this. Because this is yet another example of an end of season, back half of the year collapse. It happened in 2023, happened all the way back in 2020, happened in 2018, happened in, I mean, hell, if you really want to go all the way back, happened in 2009. They started off 6-2. They didn't make the playoffs that year. The year after that, they won the Super Bowl. They lost 5 in a row. The game that snapped the 5-game losing streak was that game against Green Bay where Ben and Aaron went toe for toe and the Mike Wallace touchdown at the gun won. They were 6-2 that year and collapsed and didn't make the postseason. So this isn't the back half of the season collapses. This is nothing new. This has been consistent throughout the Tomlin era. It was just easier to forget about when you had a Hall of Fame quarterback, you were consistently in the postseason, you were consistently winning playoff games. But ever since that Hall of Fame quarterback went away, you can't figure out how to win games that matter. And you keep getting it wrong at the quarterback position. You wasted a first-round pick on Kenny Pickett, who sucked. You brought in Mitch Trubisky to be a bridge. He sucked. You brought in Russell Wilson. He sucked. Justin Fields. He sucked. Aaron Rodgers. Okay, it started off good right now. Aaron Rodgers isn't good. Mason Rudolph isn't good. 7 different quarterbacks since Ben retired. 3 different offensive coordinators. Going back to Randy Fichtner, Matt Canada, and now Arthur Smith. Offense still isn't good. Defense still stinks. Former players are calling out the scheme. Current players are calling out the scheme. And in a year where this should have been the easiest layup for you to win the AFC North, you're sitting at 4-1. Joe Burrow's hurt. The Ravens are 1-5. Lamar Jackson's hurt. And you're going to not only not win the division, you're not going to make the playoffs after that start. And with those gifts, I'm not saying, anybody's rooting for Lamar or Joe Burrow to be hurt. But in terms of easy ways to win the division, you're given a 1-5 start by the Ravens. You're given a Bengals team that has to start Joe Flacco and Jake Browning because Joe Burrow got hurt again. And you can't take advantage of that. Mike Tomlin is a coach who the game has passed by. His approach to winning is outdated. He coaches scared, despite preaching not living in his fears. Coach is scared more than any coach in the NFL. And this is what we're left with. A team that was 4-1, had a lot of hope, but they squandered away the easiest opportunity to win the division in a very long time and are now 6-6, going to miss the postseason. Why should he survive that? He's still going to have defenders in the fan base. But why, for any defenders in there, I would love to hear a real argument as to why he should be brought back in 2026. There isn't one. There's not a good one. I've seen a lot of people already say, oh, who else could win with this roster? Who built the roster? Oh, Omar Khan's the general manager. Sure. Mike Tomlin's the one who's shopping for the groceries, though, and giving his card to Omar Khan and letting him check out. He's been with the team damn near 20 years. You don't think there's not a player on the roster that Mike Tomlin hasn't been heavily involved with bringing to Pittsburgh, or is at least signed off on, okay, yeah, let's get him. And not only that, you see the players that leave Pittsburgh who either struggle or are head cases, and then they go elsewhere, and they either play better, clean up their act, or both. George Pickens is the most recent example, obviously. You give him Dak Prescott, a really good quarterback, a good complimentary receiver in CeeDee Lamb, and would you look at that, George Pickens has calmed the hell down and is playing incredible. Looks like one of the best receivers in football. There's conversations happening right now. Oh, maybe he's the best receiver on the Cowboys roster. Remember when Kevin Dotson, they traded him to the Rams. He became a very good guard. Akello Weatherspoon, he was horrible with the Steelers. He went to the Rams, played solid football. Dante Jackson right now, actually. If you look at the season he's had with the Chargers, he's played solid football at corner. Like, this isn't new. Hell, Cheddar Bob Spillane. He was solid in Pittsburgh, went to the Raiders, now with New England. Solid starter, multiple teams. Like, these are all indictments on Mike Tomlin. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. The non-losing season streak means nothing. Absolutely nothing if you don't win when it matters, which he hasn't done in almost a decade. I'll be 27 next month. I've gotten my high school degree, my college degree in the span since the Steelers' last playoff win. If you don't win when it matters, then no one gives a shit about your non-losing season streak, nor should they. Doesn't matter. Congratulations. You can be mediocre for a decade. That's great. You know who's had losing seasons in that stretch? The 49ers, who've been to multiple Super Bowls. You know what coaches have had losing seasons? Every great one ever. Don Shula, Bill Cowher, Chuck Noll, Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay. Every great coach has had a losing season. They've had a down year. It happens. But you know what else they all have? Consistent stretches of greatness. Something Tomlin has not had. There isn't a good excuse as to why Mike Tomlin should survive this. There's not. And when you look back on things, when his time in Pittsburgh does inevitably come to an end, we will look back at this game as when things finally came crashing down. They gave up the most rushing yards in the history of their stadium. They couldn't net 170 yards of offense on their own. Fans booed Renegade, and Fire Tomlin chants rained down on him. And when it's all said and done, the choir of boos and Fire Tomlin chants should be his ceremonial swan song as he finally is let go from his job. There isn't a reason why he should be brought back. In hindsight, probably should have been fired when Ben retired. Go out with Ben, go somewhere else, start anew, because look at what's happened since then. Gone through 2 offensive coordinators, 7 quarterbacks, haven't won more than 10 games in a season, haven't won a playoff game, haven't been competitive in a playoff game. That's another thing. It'd be one thing if, like the playoff losses suck regardless, if they had just been competitive in a couple of these. But they're not. They got the hell beat out of them by the Chiefs. Got the hell beat out of them by Buffalo. Got the hell beat out of them by Baltimore. I mean, going back to the AFC title game in New England, the team that always beat the hell out of them. None of this is new. And like I said, after the loss to the Bears, I would love to be angry because this is like an uncharacteristic thing for the Steelers. I'm angry because it is a characteristic loss for the Steelers, and it's not changing. Because if you don't cut off the head of the snake, nothing's going to change. You're still just going to be stuck in this endless loop of irrelevancy. So Art Rooney needs to overcome whatever fear he has of life after Mike Tomlin. Because life with Mike Tomlin right now, this is the boiling point. Fan displeasure, at least in my lifetime, has never been this high. And you can't confidently say that you feel good about Mike Tomlin going into 2026 with all that we've seen in 2025, 2024, 2023, 2022, and 2021 for that matter. And as each year goes by, it becomes more and more obvious that Ben Roethlisberger masked a whole lot of shortcomings and issues when it comes to Mike Tomlin and the Steelers. But frankly speaking, Art Rooney needs to show some balls, move on from Tomlin in the offseason. And look, if that means that you do it in a way where it's framed as, a mutual parting of ways, we didn't fire him, we'll trade him. He approached us and said he would love a chance to go somewhere else. And so we amicably parted ways, and you send him to the Giants. Cool. Sounds great. Giants fans, have fun seeing Abdul Carter cover George Pickens on 3rd and 5. C'est la vie. However you do it, you got to do it. Because there are names out there that you can get that would be a giant breath of fresh air in Pittsburgh. The name that a lot of people want, myself included, Clint Kubiak, the offensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks. What a job he's done with Sam Darnold, making that offense maybe the most explosive in the NFL. The things that he's done with the passing game and Jackson Smith and Jigba, it's not new. He was doing the same thing when he was the pass game coordinator with the San Francisco 49ers. And when he was the offensive coordinator for the New Orleans Saints last year, remember those first 2 games of the year before Derek Carr gets hurt? They scored 40 points in each of their first 2 games. And then Carr goes down. They have to, roll with Spencer Rattler and a bunch of other guys. And, the season went south. But seeing his overall body of work, Clint Kubiak, this is a guy that you want running your offense. Who's going to run their defense? I'm not sure. But luckily, in Seattle, you have one of the best defensive minds in the league, and Mike McDonald as your head coach. I'm sure that he has an assistant or two that would be primed and ready for a defensive coordinator job. There are solutions. The Steelers just have to be willing to take a swing. And look, is there a guarantee that Clint Kubiak will be a great head coach? No. There is a chance that you swing and miss. And you know what happens if you swing and miss? You swing again. You can at least say, hey, we tried and we're going to try again, rather than banging your head against the same wall over and over again, expecting a different result. Art Rooney has to be willing to do that, though. And if he's not, then we're just going to be stuck in this loop until Mike Tomlin decides that we won't be anymore. I would love nothing more than to sit here confidently and say that he'll be gone in 2026. And I'm getting there where I can say, like, when we're going, scale of 1 to 100, what are the odds? This is as close to like 50-50 on the fence as I've ever been. It's still probably like 51-49. I'd still say, yeah, he's probably going to be there next year. But if there was ever a time to move on, next year would be the time to do it. You trade Tomlin. If you can get, a solid pick from the Giants to do it, then absolutely you do it. The Giants don't have a first round pick in 2026 because they traded it to move up with, I think who they traded with, the Rams, to get Jackson Dart. Whomever they traded up with. No, because the Falcons traded up with the Rams. Regardless, they traded up for Jackson Dart. So, the best that you could probably do in 2026 is probably a second round pick. Hell, that's still fine. It's better than just letting him go for nothing. Especially if he wants to coach. And like every big national Tomlin defender with a platform says, oh, he would be hired in 5 minutes if you fired Mike Tomlin. All right, if that's the case and he wants to continue coaching, at least get something for him. Second round pick, certainly nothing to scoff at. And if that's the case and you move on from Mike Tomlin, move on from all these old declining players too. You trade TJ Watt. If you can trade Cam Hayward, you do that. You trade Patrick Queen. He's going to be on the final year of his deal in Pittsburgh next year anyway, and feels kind of doubtful that he would come back after that. Move on from him. You're not winning anything in 2026. More than likely, it's going to be, the start of a new foundation. So you trade Patrick Queen. If you want to trade Jalen Ramsey, you trade Jalen Ramsey. Like, trade all these dudes who are old, have big contracts, and start over. You draft a quarterback in Pittsburgh with a new head coach in Pittsburgh. Like, moving on from Mike Tomlin doesn't have to be like this dreary, scary, unexplorable territory. It can be like a new dawn that we all get excited about. I know I'll be excited about it. I'm sure a lot of you watching would be too. But Art Rooney, for whatever reason, is like horrified of the idea of life after Mike Tomlin, because there's a level of a safety net there where you're never going to be drafting in the top 5. But at the same time, you also know you're never going to be drafting in the final 4 either, because you're never going to get there. Finishing every year with, the 20th pick because you got your ass kicked in the wild card round. Life's got to be better than that, man. So hopefully we see some sort of change. Now, I know that the title of this episode says Steelers Bills recap. And for the second straight week, there's not really a lot of recapping. I understand that. But what's there to really recap? We all watched the game. Josh Allen did Josh Allen things when he needed to. He put on the cape. And you know what? Sincere congratulations to Josh Allen, unapologetically my favorite player in the NFL. The new record holder for most rushing touchdowns for a quarterback, past Cam Newton. So congratulations to him for that. What else is there to really say about the game? Other than the brief things I already said. They allowed 250 yards on the ground, most in the history of Acrisure Stadium. They didn't get 170 yards on offense. Aaron Rodgers looked bad. DK Metcalf can't separate. And, another thing, with the rest of the receiving core, I know that the receiving core is bad, but the stuff with Aaron has become a real problem. And for the first time, by the way, after the game, he got pissy. I believe it was Chris Carter who asked him a question about them running on 3rd and 9 with Kenneth Gainwell, and then they get to 4th and 1 and they punt it away. Aaron got pissy with him about it, saying, "Oh, really? You want to talk philosophically right now?" That kind of annoyed me. Chris is great at his job. It was a fair question to ask why you're running on 3rd and 9. But the stuff with Aaron on the field in terms of the miscommunications and the inaccuracies, there was a play in the first half. Roman Wilson beats his defender. He's open. He's running more toward the seam. Aaron throws it to his outside shoulder. And they showed it on the replay after the incompletion. You can see Aaron directing him, you should go to the outside. And Aaron is treating these receivers, this bad receiving core, and expects them to be Jordy Nelson and Devontae Adams. They aren't good, dude. And so if you see a guy open and he's running a certain direction, you can't throw it to the opposite shoulder expecting him to just know, oh, okay, he's going to want me to go to the outside shoulder. I'll do that. It's a second-year guy who's hardly played. And you expect him to be on that level with you. You gotta do some giving here too, dude. I've been a big defender of Aaron. But that has been my biggest qualm, is that after every incompletion, the little bitch fits he throws while doing all this hand stuff. So, you should have done this, should have done that. I like Aaron, but that has been a big problem. Now, Arthur Smith gets a lot of gump too. I'm pro Arthur Smith. By no means is he a top 10 offensive coordinator in the NFL. He's not a bottom 5 one either. The Steelers offense is middle of the pack right now in just about every metric. Before Art got here, we were begging for that kind of production. Considering the lack of talent they have on offense, the fact that Art's helped get them to that point, Art's very low down on the list of people who are to blame right now. I wouldn't hire him as a Steelers head coach personally. I think he'll get another head job at some point. I don't know if it's going to be in the NFL, could be in college. I wouldn't be surprised if he got another look. But Art's far down the list of people to blame. The talent on offense isn't good. The quarterback's 42, old, beaten up, pissed off. The only good thing about the offense is the offensive line, which is nice. Took us a while to get back to saying that as fans. It's like, oh man, the offensive line's at least pretty good. But now Broderick Jones is out for the year, probably with a neck injury. That kind of sucks. But you look at what they've built up front. Zach Frazier's a stud. Troy Fultano's a stud. Mason McCormick's pretty good at right guard. So considering they have no one worth a piss at the skill positions, Jaylen Warren's good. DK Metcalf can be good, but they don't have like a true superstar anywhere. The fact that Art has them as just like a middle of the pack offense when it comes to scoring, efficiency, Arthur Smith's not the problem with the Steelers. I will go to bat for Art on that. He's not like Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay, but he's not Kevin Patullo in Philadelphia either. Like he's fine. If given competent weapons, he would be doing a much better. The offense would be much better right now. And of course, like Terrell Austin, yeah, he's a horrible defensive coordinator. I wonder, like, if Tomlin does get traded, like, would he, like, who'd he bring with him? Is Terrell Austin still the DC? Probably, right? Would Art go with him? I don't know. Would Art look elsewhere? Maybe. There's a lot of questions I would have. But it is time. And it's been time. It's taken everybody a while to come to that consensus. But I would say right now, I said it last week after the Bears loss, even more so right now. This has been the most like together that the fan base has been in terms of like almost unanimously agreeing, yeah, Tomlin's got to go. It's always been like a split debate where it's like 50-50 or like 60-40, 55-45, somewhere in there. It feels like it's like 95-5, 90-10 right now. It's never going to be 100%, I don't think. I might have just contradicted myself. But as close to unanimous as it can be, where the entire fan base is pretty much in harmony of like, yeah, he's got to go, man. And I would love to sit here with like 100% certainty and say he will be. But there's always that possibility, man, that Art Rooney comes out, says, nah, we still believe in the message. Mike Tomlin will be back. I don't want that to happen. I'm sure not a lot of fans want that to happen because what would that give us to look forward to? Like, sure, once July rolls around, training camp starts, I'll be there covering it, talking about it, and I will be excited because football will be back. And I'll allow myself to think that it can be different. But deep down I know that the guy under the headset's going to prevent that from happening. And I'm sure a lot of people will feel the same. But you can't just keep running this thing back and hoping to God something changes when it's been proven time and time again for almost a decade. It's not going to change. Doesn't matter the cast of characters there. It's always going to be the same movie. Same script, same ending. So it needs to change. I think I've done a pretty good job of not getting too animated. Years past, I would have gotten a lot more angry. I would be, the guy on talk radio who's just yelling into his microphone. But I feel like the majority of us don't love watching that or love listening to it. Make no mistake about it. I'm pissed. Okay, I'm annoyed. I would love to cover a team and root for a team that is worth investing in. This isn't a team worth investing in. Used to be. Certainly used to be. There was about a 20-year stretch where it was. Again, it's probably longer than that. I'm just talking about in my lifetime. But really, for the older fans, who had the 70s. The 80s were pretty dark. The 90s were pretty good. The 2000s were good. 2010s were largely good. 2020 suck. And sure, there's going to be like a Titans fan that sees this and says, hey, give me Mike Tomlin. Hey, you can have him. Mike Tomlin is a terrific floor raiser. He would help a team like the Titans. He would help a team like the Giants. But when it comes to getting over the top and getting to championship level football, that's not what Mike Tomlin's capable of anymore. He was at one point. He's not anymore. And that's just something that Art Rooney and the entire Steelers organization has to come to realize if they want to make any progress and be able to move forward and get back to being championship contenders. As long as Mike Tomlin's the guy in charge, they will not reach that point again. Every great coach has to be moved on from. And look, make no mistake about it. Mike Tomlin was a great coach at one point. He is now a bad coach in terms of what the Steelers need and want. But right now, the message isn't there. The scheme is stale. The message is stale. The players just aren't responding to it. A fresh start would benefit everybody. And if he goes to Tennessee, would they win probably 8 games next year? Yeah, probably. And they'd be ecstatic about it. If he went to the Giants, could they maybe sneak into the postseason? Yeah, maybe. And they would be ecstatic about it. The Titans would love to go to the wild card and get the absolute piss beat out of them by the Buffalo Bills this year. But when you're the head coach of the Steelers, there's a different standard. And that sounds so cliche, and I hate that usually, but it doesn't make it any less true. Every team wants to win, obviously. The Steelers haven't reached that bottom where they crave being a 9-win team that gets just to the wild card round. But when it happens year after year after year after year after year, Steelers fans will tell you there's nothing worse than being consistently mid. And that's what they've been. I'm not telling you guys anything you don't know. So it's a very frustrating, the most frustrating period of my fandom has certainly been the last 4 years, which isn't a surprise. Whenever you move on from a Hall of Fame quarterback and he retires, that's bound to happen. But let's see. The Steelers, so they open, according to FanDuel, as 6.5-point dogs to the Ravens. That number feels low. Now, this would be just the ultimate Tomlin thing where they go out, they play the Ravens tough, and they win on the road. In previous years, that wouldn't surprise me. And even to a degree now. Would I be totally shocked? Not really. They've played the Ravens traditionally well. Even Lamar, I know he had a good game in the postseason against them, but would I be surprised? Not really. But it also shouldn't change what is true, and that's that they need to move on from him. See some folks talking about maybe Curt Cignetti of Indiana being an option. Curt Cignetti's never leaving Indiana. I saw another person say Marcus Freeman. I don't think anybody's leaving a blue blood college football job like Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman's sitting pretty in Notre Dame. I don't think he would want to leave. Curt Cignetti could run for governor of Indiana and win tomorrow, and he's making a boatload of money a year. He's not going to leave Indiana. Some jobs, especially in Cignetti's case, where you will forever be associated with Indiana. As soon as anybody thinks Indiana football for the rest of time, the first name they'll think of is Curt Cignetti. That means something. He's not leaving Indiana to go to the Steelers. Marcus Freeman's not leaving Notre Dame. If you want realistic names in my mind that you could look at as a fan, Clint Kubiak, I've already talked about him. It would be my favorite hire. Josh Grizzard, the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, another realistic one that you can maybe give a look at. I know that the defense hasn't been as good as it was last year. I would still be totally on board with Brian Flores. Proven guy whose defensive scheme is very good. It's aggressive. There's a loaded staff in Minnesota full of talent and guys who have been around the league. Shane Day, I believe, is on that staff. And he was the pass game coordinator for Justin Herbert in 2021. It's like there's guys on that staff that he could bring with him to run the offense. It could be a very similar situation to like what D'Amico Ryans did in Houston. And in that first year with Bobby Slowick, it worked. They ended up moving on from each other. But, you know, that is just an example of a defensive-minded head coach bringing in an offensive-minded, very good offensive coordinator, giving him the keys to the offense, and then running the defense. No different than, you know, a guy like Kyle Shanahan who runs the offense and gives the keys to the defense to Robert Saleh. It's just the inverse of that. So there are names out there that are worth looking at and that could make good head coaches. Mike Kafka with the Giants right now. He's their interim head coach, but he's a guy who's gotten whispered about in terms of head coaching jobs over the past couple of years. I wouldn't bring in Brian Dable. I just think that he's too much of a hothead, and I think that he's more of a coordinator than a head coach. So there's plenty of guys you could look at. Point being that you can't just run this thing back. Can't do it. And if they do, then they'll further prove a point that myself and many other fans have stated. They care more about, hey, as long as butts are in seats, we're happy. Would it be cool to win a playoff game? Sure. But is it like focus number one? No. And he can talk about winning being a priority. But until his actions back that up, those words are going to ring hollow. So they got to move on. And again, is there a possibility that if they do move on, the guy that they hire right away is a swing and miss? Sure thing. The Eagles had it happen to them when they fired Andy Reid and hired Chip Kelly. That didn't work out. But then they hired Doug Peterson and they won a Super Bowl. And then Doug Peterson began to struggle. They fired Doug Peterson. Then they hired Nick Sirianni, went to 2 Super Bowls and won 1. Like, you got to be willing to take chances, not be stubborn. And when things begin to not work, you move on and you find something that does work and you find someone that does work. And if it doesn't, you try again. But they can't just keep beating their head against this wall. Can't do it. But I appreciate everybody for watching, listening, however you are taking this in. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening as a podcast, very much appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe. If you're listening as a podcast, leave a review, leave a comment. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment. And I'll respond to as many as I possibly can. Follow me on Twitter, @JBaileyNFL. And in your podcast feed, as well as on YouTube, you will get the national podcast, The Pump Fake, where I recap every game along with one of my many friends across the NFL. Who will it be tomorrow? I don't know yet. Could be my good friend JP Acosta from CBS Sports. Could be my good buddy Joe Serralo from CBS Sports. Matt Verderam from Sports Illustrated. Plenty of guys who consistently join me on The Pump Fake. So you'll get that in your podcast feed as well as all of the Believe in Steelers episodes on top of it. So we'll be back later on in the week, both on Believe in Steelers and The Pump Fake, to keep you updated, along with my opinions on everything going on with both the Steelers and everything around the NFL. Again, I appreciate you guys so much for listening. Appreciate you for watching. And we will be back later on Believe in Steelers. Take care.